And I said, well, yeah, I mean, almost every major politician has to have a blog in Iran to be seen credible. You would not see President Bush having a blog. The other thing I think, and not just for obvious reasons, and the other thing I think, and Iain was saying this, and that's, the blog is important to whom? I mean, I personally, as a professional, I read new media blogs, and they're incredibly important to me. You've probably never heard of them. But I would say, you know, one of the things I think a lot of us make the mistake of is that we bring a mass media sensibility to what is actually quite a niche medium. So, for instance, I was doing a little market research recently about wine blogs, A, because I like wine, and B, because I was thinking about it for some stuff with The Guardian. And the New York Times has this great wine blog called The Pour, P-O-U-R, and it is just great. And the thing is, if you look at the blog roll they have, you find this wonderful subculture of, it's not even necessarily a subculture after Sideways, of, you can't really call them wine aficionados. They're more just wine addicts, if you will, bordering on alcoholics. And they write about everything. They write about, there is one blog about a specific varietal of Italian grape. This is how niche this is. So really, you know, if you make a product, I would say don't just be aware of sort of the A-listers and the huge mass media blogs. If you make a product, be very aware of the niches, whether it's mommy blogs or wine bloggers or the Coffee Geek podcast, which is one of my favorites. But think about the niches as well as the mass.
Okay, so we have some time for questions, so please do shoot ahead. So.
I guess I've got some more gray hair in the room than just about anybody. And I come from a different time in media relations. And I wonder, you know, when you to listen to you talk, you're like a third rail. You know, if you touch it, you're dead. And the only way you can approach it is if the power is turned off. And how does one, or what is your mindset about turning off the power in order to listen and have a conversation with someone before deciding, you know, what you're going to blog? I guess what I'm getting at is, what are the ground rules for interactivity or exchange or dialogue with you?
Well, perhaps I could help you a bit, because I, like you, you know, technology is not my friend, I'll be honest. You know, my Freeview box has gone down, my PC at work at home has gone down, my mobile phone doesn't work properly, I can't change the fuse. I'm useless with technology. So I always have to ask other people to do things for me. I needed to change the colours on my blog, and I had to ring somebody up to come and show me how to change the colours on my blog. So I'm not that, you know, tech savvy or anything like that. It's taken me a year from when I started very tentatively blogging and very tentatively looking at this world to feel comfortable leaving comments out there. Now, I'm in a slightly different position because of where I work and what I do. But I would say to anybody, if you're interested in this world, don't start by blogging. There are tools you can use to see what other people are doing. Now, every morning I go into work, or even on my way to work, and I look at Google blog search, and I look at Technorati blog search, and I stick the letters BBC in, and I see what's out there. And I look at it. I don't interact with it necessarily, I look at it. Sometimes I see something interesting, I send it on an email to a friend. Don't blog if you're not comfortable blogging. Don't blog if you don't think you're going to be able to do it regularly. And think about if you really have something to say and something to add. I'm afraid there's nothing worse than a bad blog. You know, I mean, I won't name names. There's somebody in the BBC who has an internal blog. Well, I've seen your manager there. It's one of the worst blogs ever. Why is he doing it?
It wasn't quite my question. My question was about how are you approached? I mean, how could I approach you, Iain, without believing that everything I said from beginning with hello was going to be, you know, on your site?
Well, it will be. So you start with that assumption, surely.
The most interesting thing now is any conversation I have with a journalist is prefaced by the journalist saying, "Is this off the record?" And believe me, I mean, a lot of the things that I put on my blog are from journalists who, for whatever reason, cannot get these stories into their newspapers or on the screen. So they'll, I mean, I had a senior political journalist, broadcast journalist, ring me up during the Labour conference and said, oh, you'll never guess what I've just seen, and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, instantly it goes on the blog. Now, the answer to your question is, yes, of course you can approach me. I mean, my email is on the blog. If I'm approached by someone I don't know, then I automatically assume they have an agenda. And if it's someone that I know is from a PR company, then I'll assume they are trying to push the interests of one of their clients in some way. The problem that I think PR people will have with blogs is just that we're suspicious of what the agenda is. And we're not, there's no point in sending a press release on sort of your client's latest product launch to us. I mean, we don't want to know about that. We want some sort of edgy story from it. And the other problem you have is that blogging is very spontaneous. I mean, I haven't got a clue what I'm going to write today on my blog. I said to someone the other day, sort of, I don't think, therefore I blog. Because I don't think about what I'm about to write. I mean, if coming up on the train here this morning, I mean, I can email to the blog from this, and that's what I do sort of on the train. I don't know what I'm going to write on any particular day. But there's another phenomenon which I call the blog pyramid, which rather reflects what happens in the mainstream media, where national newspapers will pick up on a local newspaper story. What I'm finding now is that smaller blogs who haven't got a huge readership come across a very good story. They then email me to say, will you take this up? Because nobody will read it if it's on my blog. So I then put it on my blog, link to theirs, their hit rate goes through the roof, and everyone's happy. I've got a good story, they get huge numbers of hits. And I mean, that's another sort of term. All this linking with Technorati, you're missing out on a good PR trick here. There's a term that I've coined called blog scratching. You scratch my blog, I'll scratch yours. And that is how it works. I mean, there is this community now where bloggers of different political colours do bizarrely trust each other in some way. We may slag each other off from time to time, but I mean, I often get things from Liberal Democrat or Labour bloggers who, for whatever reason, want something put in the public domain that isn't in the interests of their own party, and I'm very happy to oblige them.
I think one thing, I mean, this may sound staggeringly obvious to a lot of you in the audience, but it was a really difficult thing to get people to understand when I was working on our guidelines. This is a public medium. It might be personal, it might be your personal blog, but frankly, it is not private. And you can see that everywhere you go. You know, people who try and remain anonymous on the blogosphere, if they're writing a blog which lots of people want to read, sooner or later somebody will find out who they are. But so it is a public conversation.
There was a great example of that in March. Nick Bowes, who was head of the Labour Party's sort of high finance unit, whose job was to go and solicit donations, had what he thought was a private blog on LiveJournal, and you had to have a password to get into it. And he wrote something along the lines of course, all these people are corrupt. It's absolutely terrible that they get peerages, blah, blah, blah. Someone hacks into it, and I mean, he's now one of the people being interviewed by Inspector Knacker of the Yard.
Hooray! the other thing, though, and Sue often says this, and Sue and I are partners in blogging, and she says, a good blog won't save a product that sucks. And that is, you know, like I go back to the original point, or one of the points that I made, and that is this is an opportunity to be responsive. You know, often it used to be, before the age of blogs, you'd never hear about a problem with the product until it was too late. Now you can sort of use blogs as an early warning system to tweak your product, to make it better. I mean, whether it's our podcasts or, you know, a product that you have on the market, you know, use it as market research. And you know, I think that's not a case of just make sure the bloggers are happy with your products or your customer service, but it is definitely a way to have your finger on the pulse of if something might be going wrong.
One of the issues that you raised there was around transparency and PR and the use of blogs. I don't know whether, Richard, you'd like to say something about transparency?
I just think the rules are, say who you are, tell people what your interest is, and be very clear about who your so-called third-party sources are, who the blogger can go talk to directly. And don't please don't do that thing that you said the Conservative Party person does,